Welcome, Mark, and good week last week. We're going to have a quick discussion about Super Rugby upcoming this week. Not crazy about many bets out there this weekend, and I've been on a bit of a roll last week and a couple of weeks now. And just because I'm on a roll doesn't mean I'm going to make a bet on everything. And sometimes the bets you don't make always make you the money that you may lose.
Yeah, good weekend for you last weekend, and the one weekend before that. And again, I think what showed up were the bookies at times, knee-jerk reaction. You were looking more holistically at team form, players that have been rested, etc. I think the big one that you called was that you felt the Bulls, having rested all those key players, could struggle, and that the Jaguars would beat the handicap and potentially win the game. They left it till late, won at 22-20. Very disappointed in the way the Bulls didn't finish out that game, lost players to yellow cards, especially playing at Loftus, and two big losses there to lose away from home and at home to the Jaguars. And then the big disappointment last week, obviously, the Stormers. And you said stay away from that game. The Reds are the kind of side that Barrett Thorne has brought structure to them. Yeah. But just when you think they can close a game, they don't. They don't really have the squad depth. And I know the Stormers a lot of injuries in that, but there is good depth in that squad when it comes to quality youngsters. And
unfortunately, there's not much depth in the coaching staff until Paul Dobson gets his hands on that team.
Yeah, John Dobbo, yeah.
John Dobson,
and
sorry.
I think there again, and you see the same thing that happened with Ireland and what's happened with Fleck, is the minute you announce the coach is going and there's a new guy taking over, there is a dynamic change that happens. I think Fleck should have just stepped aside, whether they paid him out or not, and let Dobbo just step straight into the role and take over. And it's a bit like taking 7 grade 11s and putting them into the grade 12 first team with 6 games to go, because you know that side's not going to win anymore, and you build for the next year. So yeah, I'm very disappointed with the Stormers. And then obviously you said crazy bet on making the Lions such favourites at home against the Sharks, and you had the Sharks to win comfortably. But I don't think anyone expected them to be 35-0 up with 5 minutes to play. I think 42-5, and the Lions scored in the 78th minute. So a big whacking at home, and they got hammered by the Bulls at home as well.
Yeah, for me, sometimes we tend to overanalyze stuff, where I do as well. And when you're looking for a punt, never bet with your heart, always bet with your head. And look, when I'd done the math on that game and just watching it, I've watched every Super Rugby game this year, and it's been painful at times. But for me, it was an obvious bet. The Sharks are a better team. They've played better. The Lions have struggled. In that bet, I made a personal bet in that one, not for the fun that I managed, for the Sharks to win by 11 or more points. That paid 8-1. I wish I'd have gone 25 or 30, but I mean, hindsight, so it was 100%. But to me, it was an obvious bet. And I think 14% of the people in Super Brew picked the right winner there, and I'm just glad I was one of them.
And great to see Cohen Bosch get a grown at fullback, actually play well, played with freedom. And I think one of the big things in this country is we get very good, talented youngsters that come out of the schoolboy system. And we've got some incredible schoolboy sides. If you look at Great College destroying Christchurch boys 76-26 in the World Festival, and the New Zealanders saying it's one of the greatest schoolboy teams they've seen. And what happens between under 19 and under 21 level with these guys, and then senior level. But we get the Damien Willemses and the Cohen Bosch that come through, and we want them to be Dan Carters at 21. And they're not necessarily that. And then by 22, we want to send them off to Europe and write them off. And Cohen Bosch has defensive frailties, like a lot of players like him do have globally, and good coaches work around that. But look at the attacking skill that he brings, his kicking game. The fact that he's been on the bench or not being played for most of the season is an insult.
Well, he's a kid, isn't he? Still a kid.
He's 21 years old.
Okay. When I was 21, I don't know if I can think back that far, but when I played rugby, you didn't peak at 21. Depending on the coach that you played with, and coaches can get amazing things out of players. And I just don't. I get the impression that hasn't been happy in the shadows there. And look what he does in his first game, his first start.
I think one of the most telling things what Eddie Jones said when he was involved with the Springboks, and he came over, had a bit to do with Jake White's winning ways, and he said in Australia, when you get 2 good players, you've got to coach them. So they had Matt Burke and they had Stephen Larkham, both fullbacks. They didn't have a fly-off. So they turned Larkham into a fly-off, and they said it took 3 years at international level for him to finally settle as a fly-off. But they didn't have enough players to choose one or the other. They had to have both.
And in fairness, Mark, they don't have the glare of the media spotlight which people in players in South Africa have.
Yeah. So, but his thing was that
So they had the time to do it.
Yeah, but also he says in your country, you've got a feeder system from Stellenbosch University, he says in the Crusaders rugby, that would make most of the Australian under 20 sides. So if that 7 or that 10 or that 12 hasn't done it in 2 matches, you just hoof him and get the next one. Yeah. He said they didn't have that luxury, so he felt coaching was the biggest thing in this country. We don't coach our players to become better players. We accept that if they're not there at 21, they're not going to make it at all. And that's something we really have to look at, especially with a guy like Cohen Bosch, a youngster like Damien Willemse as well. Again, you know, we have X-factor players and we just don't encourage them enough to be that X-factor player. You take someone like Cheston Colby, who it was hit and miss for 6-7 years in this country. Then everyone wanted to convert him to a scrum half, and he's gone to Toulouse and he's been. Well,
that's a great point, because what underscores that is all the talent that goes overseas. The SAFAs abroad. I think we write an article on SA Rugby about it every week. When you look at all the talent that's being discarded here or not invested in, from a coaching or financial point of view, look what happens to these players. You know,
and Colby over there, like he was the best. Last year he was said to Media Olympics said he was the best foreign signing. He's playing in a league where most of those winners are Fijian, and they are 120 kilograms plus, and he handles himself and he beats them with dazzling footwork, and he's got a ticker as big as anyone's, and he showed that when he played for the Box last year. But for how many years in this country was he too small? Yeah. Defensively vulnerable, apparently, couldn't make it in the big leagues, would never be able to handle playing against the All Blacks. It's like, so they forget that he can play against 12 other nations, you know. So I think if we just lose that mindset and start encouraging the good youngsters to come through, it also makes watching a game like the Sharks Lions that much more enjoyable when you see the freedom of expression and you see 21-year-olds like flourishing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's amazing what motivation will do when you want to preserve your life. Because running around with all those Fijian wingers trying to hit you gives you that bit of extra motivation.
Yeah, basically they're not attacking you, they're going to potentially be eating you. So,
Mark, let's get into the Super Rugby picks. There's not much that I like this week in terms of looking. When I've gone over the numbers, the bookies are pretty spot on in a lot of ways. Let's go over the handicap and let's at least do Super Brew picks.
All right, Crusaders, Highlanders minus 14.5. It is in Christchurch. That game was 0-0. It was never played, the early one, because of the Christchurch mosque attack. Your feeling on that one?
The Highlanders playing in Christchurch?
In Christchurch, yeah.
Didn't they declare that game a 0-0 draw?
No, there was the one in Dunedin.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Look, it's hard to argue against anything that the Crusaders are doing. One of my followers asked me, sent me a message saying, do I think that the whole Christchurch mass shooting will have any effect on the mentality of the Crusaders? And my answer is no. I mean, if anything, it'll galvanize them, and we've seen since they've come back through their performance how well that they've done. They're just an incredibly well-functioning, well-coached, well-stocked team. So to me, on Super Brew, I'll go 20 plus.
All right, I kind of am going for them to win, but I think it will be by less than 10, just because of the derby element. South Island, Highlanders, you know, the Highlanders were your pick at the beginning to potentially win the league. They've had a couple of close losses, 2 or 3 pointers that could have gone either way. I think they're due for a good performance. It's Ben Smith's 150th game. I think that they could beat that spread.
It's
a New Zealand derby.
It's over 2 converted tries, and you know, it's tough to win by that much. But I just like the Crusaders with a lot of points. But Super Brew is not that important to me, so let's keep.
Super Brew's about the ego, Money Man's about the cash.
Yeah, for sure.
And those charities it goes to. Rebels minus 10.5 against the Stormers.
Well, the Stormers are missing 10 players. I think we've got more Stormers here than we have out in Melbourne. The Rebels have looked good. They've looked the pick of the Australian bunch. That's the only rugby game I'm betting on this weekend. I'm going to take the Rebels to win by 11 or more for 1,000 to get back 1,900. And for my Super Brew pick, I'm going to pick Rebels plus 16.
To look at the Rebels, I think what people need to understand is this isn't the Rebels as a franchise that we knew. This is like an Australian select 15 that Dave Wessels has assembled. And Will Guinea and Quade Cooper at halfback be massive for them this year.
Yeah, what a rebirth for Cooper.
Yeah, and I thought, you know, just a couple of weeks ago when he had that great game against the Queensland Reds and he was embracing his mates after, it's just a place he grew up in, it's the only place he's ever known. And he said they're not the ones who had an issue with me. It was someone else. So why would he have an issue with them? He'll always back them and support them. Same with Guinea, you know, so it's good to see them. It's good for the Australian setup. So I agree with you that I think the Rebels will win. They'll win quite comfortably, as they did against the Sunwolves last week when they hammered them 42-15. Chiefs, Blues, another big derby in New Zealand. And this one's in Hamilton, -5.5. The Chiefs.
Yeah, I like the Chiefs to cover that spread. I think that I'm not going to bet on it, but on Super Brew, I'd say the Chiefs by 7 or more.
Yeah, because I also think, because the Blues have got these wins, but they've had them all at home. And they haven't been on the road since they were on the road for 2 matches in South Africa and then obviously in Buenos Aires, and they lost them both. So I also like that one. And I think the Chiefs are coming back into a bit of form after their poor start.
Well, they couldn't get any worse form, could they?
No, they got their 50-pointer against the Bulls. Loftus went and beat the Jaguares. Good win in Buenos Aires. Yeah, I also fancy them at home. In Auckland, I think it's a 1-score game. Whoever's playing at home wins it. Okay. Brumbies, Lions.
Oh, jeez.
-3.5.
For the Brumbies?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Brumbies have been so inconsistent. They've been incredibly poor. They've had one or two decent wins. And the Lions, I don't know. That for me on my Super Brew, I'm certainly not betting on the game. I think the Lions might win this one. For my Super Brew, I'm going to have Lions plus by 1 or more, because I don't know, and I'm hoping that I'll get a bonus point if it's close, and so they go either way. I think you get a point in Super Brew if we win 5. So because I don't know, I'm going to toss a coin. Lions by 1. You?
Yeah, I also think I just don't rate the Brumbies at all. No. You know, and even when they were 7-0 up after 40 minutes against the Crusaders, you just felt it was a matter of time that they were going to take the 20-point beating, and then they were 26-7 down, and it ended up losing it by 19 points. So I just think the Lions will come back on tour and get a win there. Sharks -8.5 against the Jaguares. Never know what's going to arrive with those Latin guys. You
never know what's going to arrive with the Sharks either. Yeah, I've got a feeling it's going to be a low-scoring game. 8.5 is a lot of points, so this is why I'm not betting on it. I wouldn't touch it for love or money. So I'm gonna say that the Sharks by 7.
Okay, and your Super Brew?
No, Sharks by 7.
Yeah. Okay, and then the Bulls at home against the Reds. They've got all their players back. -13.5.
Yeah, the Reds have won the last 3 games, and they've looked, like I said, they've looked structured and they've looked competent. But coming to Loftus, probably a bridge too far, and I got a feeling that the Bulls are going to put 20 plus past them. You know, I may have a little run betting on that one, but for Super Brew, I've put the Bulls by 22.
Yeah, that's funny. I've got a funny feeling that the Reds are going to run them close. I think the Bulls will win, but I think the Reds could cover the spread. Not necessarily because of the Reds, but because of the inconsistency we've seen with the Bulls. And I think Schalk Brits is a big one that they've lost, and he's still not back. He's still like 3 more games out. Pollard being back, obviously, and Jesse Creel add a lot more punch. But
what they do well, and this is again goes to the type of rugby that's going to be needed in the World Cup, is this taking the points on offer and keeping the scoreboard ticking over. You know, it's 3, 6, 9, 12. We all know what 3 goes up in incremental amounts, but you know, when you look at the scoreboard and you've taken points, that's what I like about the Bulls rugby. Is that they punish teams. They punish teams that transgress.
All right, so you comfortable that they'll whip them?
Yeah.
And then just to recap, your big bet?
My only bet is the Rebels to lay another beating on the fleckless Stormers.
I like that, fleckless.
Yeah.
Stormers to get a try at least.
Yeah, I think Stormers will get a try.
Because apparently it's not a concern that they don't score them.
No. Anyway, listen, Mark, so it was a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.